The Patriarca Network has stolen billions from the American people, tax dollars meant for schools, hospitals, and roads. And today, we will prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. Her words echoed with conviction, but her gaze never left Marwood, sensing something beneath the judge's calm demeanor that didn't sit right. Pam Bondi stood at the prosecution table, her eyes locked on the judge's bench, where Judge Elena Marwood sat with an air of authority that seemed unshakable. The courtroom buzzed with tension, every seat filled with spectators, reporters, and mafia enforcers in tailored suits. Bondi's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. The trial had been underway for days, and Bondi, as U.S. Attorney General under President Trump, led the charge against the mafia syndicate with unrelenting determination. She called her first witness, a former accountant for the Patriarca Network named Daniel Russo. Russo, a nervous man with sweat beading on his forehead, took the stand. Bondi approached him, her tone steady. Mr. Russo, can you confirm that the Patriarca Network set up shell companies to siphon tax money from infrastructure contracts? Russo nodded, his voice shaky. Yes, I saw the transactions myself. They moved billions into offshore accounts while fake companies billed the government for work that was never done. Bondi turned to the jury, holding up a stack of financial records. These documents show the money trail, tax dollars meant for the American people, stolen by the defendants. She pointed to the mafia bosses sitting at the defense table, their faces stone cold. But before she could continue, Judge Marwood's gavel slammed down. Objection sustained, Marwood declared, her voice sharp. These records lack proper authentication. They're inadmissible. Bondi's jaw tightened. She glanced at her co-counsel, a young prosecutor named Sarah Klein, who whispered, "That's the second time she's thrown out our evidence." Bondi nodded, her suspicion growing. She pressed on, calling for a wiretapped recording to be played. The audio filled the courtroom, a gravelly voice, identified as mafia boss Vincent Patriarca, boasting, "We've got the feds eating out of our hands. Those contracts are our piggy bank." The jury leaned forward, engrossed, but Marwood interrupted again. "This recording is inadmissible," she snapped. "The chain of custody is unclear." Bondi spun toward the bench, her voice rising. "Your Honor, the chain of custody was verified by 3 federal agents. This evidence is critical." Marwood's eyes narrowed. "I've made my ruling, Attorney General. Move on." Bondi's frustration boiled over. She stepped closer to the bench, her tone laced with defiance. "Your Honor, this is the 3rd time you've dismissed critical evidence without justification. Are you presiding over this court, or are you defending the Patriarca Network?" The courtroom fell silent, the air thick with shock. Spectators exchanged stunned glances, and the mafia bosses shifted in their seats, smirking. Marwood's face flushed red, her voice trembling with fury. "You're out of line, Attorney General. I won't have my integrity questioned by a political appointee pushing Trump's agenda." Bondi didn't back down. She planted her hands on her hips, her voice cutting through the tension. "Your integrity? You're bearing evidence faster than the mafia buries bodies. Whose agenda are you serving?" Marwood slammed her gavel so hard it echoed off the walls. "You will not speak to me that way in my courtroom. One more word and I'll hold you in contempt." Bondi leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "Go ahead, Your Honor. Silence me, but you can't silence the truth. The American people deserve to know why their tax dollars are funding criminals while you sit there protecting them." The courtroom erupted. Spectators shouted, reporters scribbled furiously, and the mafia defendants exchanged smug looks. Bailiffs rushed forward to restore order as Marwood called for a recess, her hands shaking as she gathered her robes and stormed out. Bondi turned to Sarah, her voice low but fierce. "She's hiding something. We need to dig deeper." Sarah nodded, pulling out her laptop. "I'll get our investigators on it. If Marwood's biased, we'll find out why." That night, Bondi's team worked tirelessly in a cramped hotel room near the courthouse. Sarah burst in, holding a folder. "We found something," she said, her voice urgent. "Marwood's brother, Thomas, runs a construction company that was on the verge of bankruptcy. Guess who bailed him out with a $5 million contract?" Bondi's eyes narrowed. "The Patriarca Network." Sarah nodded. "Exactly. The contract was funded with the same tax money they stole. And there's more. Bank records show payments to an offshore account in Marwood's name. She's been on their payroll. Bondi's mind raced. She knew this was the break they needed, but it also meant the stakes were higher than ever. The mafia wouldn't let this go without a fight. She looked at Sarah, her voice firm. We need to confront her in court. This ends tomorrow. Sarah hesitated. What if she shuts us down again? Bondi's expression hardened. She won't. Not when the whole country is watching. The next morning, the courtroom was packed, the tension palpable. News of Bondi's clash with Marwood had spread, and protesters gathered outside, chanting, "Justice for taxpayers." Bondi took her place at the prosecution table, her posture radiating determination. As the session began, she addressed the court. Your Honor, before we proceed, the prosecution has new evidence that calls into question the impartiality of this court. Marwood's eyes widened, but she quickly masked her unease. That's a serious accusation, Attorney General. You'd better have proof. Bondi held up the bank records, her voice steady. These documents show payments from the Patriarca Network to an offshore account in your name, Your Honor. Payments that coincide with your brother's company receiving a $5 million contract, funded by stolen tax money. The courtroom buzzed with shock. Marwood's voice rose, sharp and defensive. This is a fabrication. You're trying to destroy my career for political points. Bondi stepped closer, her tone unyielding. The only thing being destroyed here is the trust of the American people, because you sold their justice to the highest bidder. Marwood's composure cracked. She stood, her voice shaking with rage. You have no right to accuse me of this. I've served this bench for 20 years with honor. Bondi didn't flinch. Honor? You call it honor to let criminals walk free while American families suffer? Schools are crumbling, hospitals are understaffed, and roads are falling apart. All because the mafia you're protecting stole their tax money. Marwood's hands gripped the edge of the bench, her voice a snarl. You're a mouthpiece for a corrupt administration. This is nothing but a witch hunt. Bondi's voice rose to match hers, each word a hammer blow. A witch hunt? I'm hunting for justice, Your Honor. Justice for the people whose money you helped steal. You've been blackmailed by the mafia, haven't you? They own you, and you've been throwing this case to save your own skin. The courtroom was in chaos now, spectators on their feet, shouting. Marwood's face twisted with fury and fear. You have no proof of that. None. Bondi held up a USB drive, her voice cutting through the noise. Then explain this. A recorded conversation between you and Vincent Patriarca discussing how you'd make this case disappear. The audio played, Marwood's voice unmistakable. I'll handle the trial, Vincent. Just make sure my brother's safe. Vincent's gravelly reply followed. You do your part, Elena, and we'll take care of you. The jury gasped, and Marwood's face went pale. She sank into her chair, her voice barely a whisper. I had no choice. They threatened my family. Bondi's expression didn't soften. You had a choice, Your Honor. You chose to betray the people you swore to serve. The American people trusted you, and you let the mafia eat their future. Marwood's hands shook as she clutched her gavel, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted this, she choked out. They forced me. I couldn't let them hurt my brother. Bondi's voice was cold. Your brother's company profited while children went to school in trailers and patients died in underfunded hospitals. You don't get to play the victim here. Marwood buried her face in her hands, sobbing, as bailiffs moved to escort her from the bench. Bondi turned to the jury, her voice steady. I move for a mistrial. This court has been compromised. The mafia defendants, realizing their protection was gone, exchanged panicked looks as their lawyers scrambled to respond. A new judge was assigned within hours, and the case was set to be retried. The courtroom began to empty, but the weight of what had happened lingered in the air. Bondi gathered her files, her expression resolute. Sarah approached her, her voice quiet. We did it. Marwood's out, and the mafia's on the ropes. Bondi nodded, her voice firm. This is just the beginning. We'll get them in the next trial. For the people whose money they stole. For the future they tried to destroy. The protesters outside continued their chants, their voices a reminder of the stakes. Bondi stepped out of the courtroom, her head held high, knowing the fight for justice had taken a crucial turn. The American people had seen corruption exposed in the highest ranks of the judiciary, and they would not forget. The battle was far from over, but in that courtroom, a victory had been won, one that reaffirmed the power of truth, even in the face of betrayal.